Let's start, Birgit, with the story you wrote. Angela Merkel is loath to increase spending. If you said fiscal stimulus, she would probably say no right away as a knee-jerk reaction. But are there cracks in that exterior starting to show?
Yes, I think the cracks you can see almost everywhere. I mean, Merkel was much more cautious now after the summer break, as she has also been aware of where the economy is going. I mean, she for the first time sort of said, hopefully there will not be a stimulus. And she said, just for now there won't be a stimulus. So we do see that the government is much more careful. Also, the German finance minister, he's also not that kind of committal anymore.
Olaf Scholz.
Exactly, Olaf Scholz is not that committal anymore to the black zero, which his former Wolfgang Schäuble, who has always put this forward. So we do see some loosening, but they are not yet there, the government yet.
Nera?
Birgit, great to have you with us. If we do actually get a recession in Germany, how much more pressure will that put on the government? I mean, will they actually be prompted to act more quickly? People have pointed out to me and Matt this week that traditionally Germany doesn't tend to react until they're in a full-blown crisis.
Well, there is this issue that the German constitution has now put very strict limits on launching big stimulus programs. So you do have to have the parliament to declare a fundamental crisis. And this is sort of the constitutional and the legal situation. And then we have a political situation that the CDU and the SPD, they have agreed to keep a balanced budget. And the CDU, this is almost the last landmark what this government is standing for, and they're really unlikely to give this up very easily.
Although when you're getting paid to borrow, even out to 30 years, you might want to think about changing those laws. Benny, what's been the corporate fallout of this? We've seen a number of profit warnings in recent days and weeks.
Yes, that's right. So it's not been a very good quarter for a lot of companies, and it's really been across the board. You've seen it at companies like bellwethers like Siemens, BASF, Henkel, Metro, so really across the board, with some pockets where it's particularly pronounced. Automotive is very hard hit, consumer spending is very hard hit, and that is, going to Birgit's point, something that the government will look at very closely. How is consumer behavior sort of shaping up into the next quarter? And it's not looking great at the moment. Germany's historically fairly tight-fisted. They don't like to spend that much, but we have seen it sort of ripple through the industries, and in automotive, in consumer, in travel, that's sort of where we're seeing most of the fallout.
The interesting thing, I think, is when I go out and talk to executives like Frank Witter at Volkswagen or like Stefan Engel at Commerzbank, and I ask them, do you think the government should be spending more money? Are you satisfied with the German infrastructure right now? They actually say they're fine with it. And I haven't seen the German infrastructure in such bad shape in the last 20 years.
That's absolutely right. So they have to do something. Roads are in disrepair, and if you go down an autobahn, you'll probably spend more time in a traffic jam and in construction sites than actually traveling. 5G rollout, that's something that a lot of companies are waiting for. So we're in a bit of a sort of holding pattern.
4G
at the moment.
rollout, broadband is something that a lot of people in Germany are waiting for. Nera?
Benny, if the trade war gets worse, because day by day we're watching these headlines here, and that's one of the big reasons, of course, that German corporates are suffering, is there any way that they'll be able to turn things round, or is it just a downward trend from here in terms of profits?
Yes, I think it's more of the latter of what you just said. So the German economy, its great strength is also its great vulnerability. It's an export-driven economy, and therefore it's sort of tied into the global streams of goods. And if that dries up, or if there's a hitch there, as we might see in a more pronounced way with a trade war not showing any signs of abating, then that is really bad news. You know, a company like Daimler depends on being able to move its cars from China through Europe to the US and vice versa without many barriers. And if that creates a bigger problem, then they're in real trouble. Plus, you have Brexit. That's an unresolved issue. So there's a number of things heading into the second part of the year that companies are quite apprehensive about.
I want to get Birgit back to just quickly. Germany has a ton of money anyway, a surplus, but also the borrowing is so cheap. Is there any way to get around the debt brake, the legal hurdle to borrow?
Well, there is one way, and actually the government is almost looking at this, but It's setting up sort of special budgets outside the existing budget, which would mean create a company, for example, as you say, for infrastructure or for the train service or for climate. So, but yes, that is a
or for climate, which is key because green bonds is something that we've been talking about.
Yes, exactly. I mean, climate is going to come up. The SPD and the CDU, they do want to make this into a political issue. They do want to get things moving, and a big time, especially because the Greens are here on the rise and they want to show that they are also able to do what the public wants them to do.